Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a question that, well, a lot of people who remember the 80s have probably asked. Whatever happened to Phillip Michael Thomas? We've gathered quite a bit of material here, articles, notes, some deeper research to really try and understand his story.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
So let's rewind a bit. Picture the mid-80s, the neon, the music.
Yeah.
And there he is, Ricardo Tubbs,
Yeah.
half of the iconic Miami Vice duo.
Such a defining show.
Exactly. And our goal today is to dig into what happened after that huge success. We want to look beyond that simple idea of a star just fading away.
Right, because it's more complicated than that. His story isn't just about Miami Vice.
Definitely not. We want to celebrate his impact, but also understand the journey.
Yeah, Phillip Michael Thomas, he was absolutely a household name, but his career after Vice, well, it took some really interesting turns. Some successes, sure, but also some real challenges. It's a story about, I think, talent, definitely adaptability, and maybe a kind of quiet resilience. We'll look at his rise, the legacy, that pivot he made to music, and some of the specific roadblocks he hit.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's dive into these sources. So Phillip Michael Thomas, he hits the big time in 1984, starring as Rico Tubbs on Miami Vice. He's paired with Don Johnson's Sonny Crockett,
Right.
and he plays this sharp New York cop. Comes down to Miami, chasing his brother's killer.
And the show itself, I mean, wow, it wasn't just popular TV. It felt like a cultural event.
Totally.
You had the fashion, the cars, that amazing soundtrack. And the numbers back it up. Our sources, like Nielsen ratings from back then, show that at its peak, maybe 85, it was pulling in something like 16 million viewers an episode.
Wow, that's massive.
Huge numbers for the time.
And Thomas's performance was key. He had that cool charm, but there was grit there too. Tubbs wasn't just a smooth operator. The sources suggest he gave the character real depth. You know, the loyal friend, but also driven by this personal tragedy. Audiences really connected with that.
And the style. You can't talk about Tubbs without talking about the style.
Oh, yeah.
The pastel suits, the open collars, no socks. He became this instant fashion icon. I think there was a 86 piece in People magazine, our sources mention it, calling him a fashion trailblazer.
I remember that look. It was everywhere.
It directly influenced menswear lines, absolutely.
And this wasn't just a U.S. thing, was it? He became famous worldwide.
Oh, globally. Sources like Variety were reporting in 87 about, fans mobbing him on promotional tours. London, Tokyo. He was an international star.
So big fame, style icon,
Yeah.
and presumably making good money.
Yeah, the sources point to around $25,000 an episode at the height of it all.
Which for the mid-80s.
That's serious money. He was absolutely central to that whole Miami Vice glamour.
Okay, so the show wraps in 1989. The neon lights dim. What happens next? That was the million-dollar question, right?
Exactly. And navigating that transition, it turned out to be really, really tough.
Yeah.
The sources consistently show that keeping that kind of momentum going after such a massive, defining role, well, the industry isn't always kind.
And the main issue, again and again in the research, seems to be typecasting.
Absolutely. Rico Tubbs was so iconic, so burned into everyone's mind, that it seems casting directors just couldn't see him as anyone else.
Really limited his options for different kinds of roles.
Severely limited them, and he talked about it himself. We found reference to a 96 interview, I think Entertainment Weekly, where he basically said, after Miami Vice, I was Rico Tubbs to everyone. It was a blessing and a curse.
Wow, that sums it up pretty well.
It really does. And the result was his acting work, it just slowed way down in the 90s.
Right.
The sources list some of the things he did, smaller parts, guest spots on shows, things that were definitely a step down from Vice. Often you get the sense it was just to keep working, pay the bills.
Like guesting on Nash Bridges.
Yeah.
That was 97. And there was an Italian miniseries, too.
Yeah. We Are Angels, also 97, not very well known outside Italy. And some TV movies, like a Perry Mason one early on.
So he's working, but nothing's hitting like Miami Vice did.
Not even close. Nothing had that visibility or that cultural buzz. And the sources are pretty clear this decline wasn't just about ego, it hit him financially too.
Yeah, you mentioned the $25K an episode. That must have been a stark contrast.
Huge contrast. There's one source, I think it was an IMDb post from around 2001, suggesting his net worth had dipped below $500,000 by the late 90s.
Oof, that's quite a drop.
It really shows how fast things can change in Hollywood, when that high-profile work disappears.
So it sounds like a really rocky period. He had to find a new path somehow.
He definitely had to adapt, yeah. And it wasn't smooth sailing. It kind of lifts the veil on the less glamorous side of fame.
But acting wasn't his only passion, right? There was music, too.
Exactly. And the sources emphasize this wasn't just something he picked up after fame. Music was deep-rooted for him.
Yeah, I saw that, too. Like, a Jet magazine profile from '85 mentioned him playing guitar, keyboards, being in bands way back as a teenager in California.
Right. So it was always there. And after Vice, or even during it, that musical side came forward. The sources portray it as like a conscious pivot, a way to be creative outside the acting box that felt a bit confining.
And he actually released an album during Miami Vice, didn't he?
I did. Living the Book of My Life.
Yeah.
Right at the peak of his TV fame. It
Yeah.
was sort of R&B, pop, smooth vocals.
That's too.
Commercially. Not great. The sources, like looking at Billboard archives, suggest it sold maybe fewer than 10,000 copies. It just didn't catch fire.
Huh. Did that stop him?
Doesn't seem like it. He kept at it. The sources mention him performing still, like a concert in LA in '93 with a couple thousand people. And he put out a second album, Somebody, in '88.
Did that one do better?
Similarly struggled, unfortunately. Didn't really chart either.
So how were fans reacting to this musical direction?
Seems like it was mixed. We found mentions like an old social media post from '90 praising his voice, calling it soulful.
Okay.
But then other sources, like fan letters mentioned in TV Guide around '92, show people were just really wanting him back on screen, you know?
Really?
Missing Rico tubs.
So this focus on music, while maybe fulfilling for him, it also pulled him further from acting opportunities.
It seems like it coincided with that acting slowdown, yeah. By the late '90s, neither the acting nor the music career was really at a high point.
But he did find a way back to acting, sort of,
Yeah.
through voice work.
Yeah, that's an interesting turn. The sources point to the video game Grand Theft Auto, Vice City in 2002.
Oh, right. He voiced Lance Vance.
Exactly, which felt like this clever little nod back to his Miami Vice roots, didn't it?
It really did, a bit meta.
Yeah, and looking at that whole music phase, based on the sources, it kind of highlights that challenge, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to be seen as more than just one thing in an industry that loves to label you.
It seems like there were specific moments, specific missed opportunities, too, that really illustrate these challenges.
Oh, definitely. The sources give us some concrete examples.
Like auditioning for New York Undercover. That was around 1990.
Right after Vice.
Mm-hmm.
A gritty cop show seemed like a good fit on paper, but, as sources like The Hollywood Reporter later noted, he didn't get the lead. Malik Yoba did. And apparently, Thomas felt that role could have been a real comeback.
Wow, that's tough. And wasn't there something with the movie Heat as well?
Yeah, in '95, Michael Mann's big crime film, sources like Variety mentioned he was considered for a supporting role.
Yeah.
But Mann apparently went another way, citing the fact that Thomas was still just so strongly associated with Tubbs.
Man, that typecasting was relentless.
It really seemed to be. And these examples, they show how it directly limited his choices, pushing him towards maybe less visible work just to stay active.
And the money situation, you mentioned the dip in net worth. Were there specific struggles there, too?
Yeah, the sources detail a lawsuit around 1998 over unpaid royalties from Miami Vice syndication. The LA Times reported on it. He was apparently owed about $200,000.
Which, given the timeline...
Was money he really wanted then, according to the sources? His savings were apparently getting low.
Did he get the money?
The case settled eventually, around 2000. But that period of financial strain seems to have been real. And it pushed him towards... taking whatever gigs came along, including more theater work.
Like, wasn't there mention of him doing Othello?
In Miami, yeah.
Yeah.
A regional production in 2003. Local reviews mention him playing the lead, but to, fairly small audiences, maybe 300 people.
So still performing, still honing the craft, but on a very different scale.
Exactly. It shows the dedication, but also the reality of where his career was at that point.
So when we look at the whole picture, all these sources...
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to see the challenges.
It is. And it's a good reminder, I think, that even reaching that level of fame, that '80s superstardom, it doesn't guarantee smooth sailing forever in entertainment.
But framing it only as a decline feels wrong, doesn't it? Based on what we've read. His impact from Miami Vice alone is, well, it's still here.
Undeniable. The show's influence is lasting. Fashion, TV drama style, you still see echoes of it.
And even recent sources pick up on that. Like the talk about a possible Netflix reboot in 2023. They cited Tubbs as a timeless character.
Right. That says a lot about the performance and the character's endurance.
And interestingly, his music, which didn't break through back then, it's found a second life online.
Kind of a cult following, yeah. Sources show that tracks from that first album, like You're the Song I Sing,
Yeah.
have actually picked up steam on platforms like Spotify. Tens of thousands of streams by 2024.
So maybe not a blockbuster hit, but still connecting with people decades later.
It's a different kind of legacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the narrative that emerges from the sources isn't really one of failure. It's more about perseverance.
Yeah, adapting, exploring different creative outlets when one door seemed less open.
He navigated setbacks, tried new things, and definitely left his mark on pop culture.
And what's his life like now, according to the sources?
He's in his mid-70s now, living a quieter life down in Miami, apparently.
Still connects with the fans sometimes.
Occasionally, yeah. Sources mention him at fan conventions, like a Miami Vice reunion event in 2022. A fan blog reported he was there, sharing stories with about 1,000 attendees.
That's nice to hear. And financially, has things sort of stabilized?
Seems like it. Recent estimates, like from Celebrity Net Worth in 2025, put his net worth around $2.5 million.
Okay.
So a modest recovery over time, likely helped by residuals, maybe that voice work, stuff like that.
So maybe he never quite recaptured that massive 80s fame?
Probably not, no.
But the story the sources tell is much richer than just faded star. It's about resilience, sticking with it, and leaving a legacy that, in its own way, endures.
I think that's a fair assessment based on everything we've looked at.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've traced Phillip Michael Thomas's path using these sources. The huge Miami Vice fame, the challenges of typecasting and finances that followed, that interesting turn towards music, and finally arriving at a place of maybe quieter contentment, but with a legacy that's still recognized.
Yeah, and diving into these sources, it really shows you the human side of fame, doesn't it? The ups, the downs, but also the choices, the adaptations you have to make when you're navigating that kind of unpredictable career. It's definitely more than just one iconic role. It's a whole life.
So a final thought for you, our listeners. Thinking about Phillip Michael Thomas's story, everything we've discussed from the sources, what does it make you think about how we measure success in entertainment and what truly defines a lasting impact?